already drank that whole shape? Hey, I'm sure most of you have had no problem identifying what these stones are. This is aquamarine, and I really like to cut aquamarine, and the color's just great. So, but every once in a while you're able to find something a little bit darker, dark aquamarine. So a couple of years ago, I was able to find one rough dealer out of Africa who had a small lot of dark aquamarine. And I was able to buy a couple of pieces. He didn't, he wanted to sell the lot by the lot price, but he did let me sell buy a couple of pieces. So I'm going to cut one. So the one I want to cut is this piece because it's a flat pancake piece. Because this rough is flat or thin, I consider this to be the worst piece of the few pieces that I was able to pick up that one time. I wish I could have purchased more. I haven't seen aquamarine of this color before or since then. I doubt that I'll find this rough of this color again anytime soon, but I'll keep looking. I have cut flat rough into gemstones before, but the options are pretty limited. In this particular case, I think it's best to cut this stone into two pieces and to cut two gemstones out of it. I think I'd prefer two smaller gemstones rather than one large flat gemstone. Okay, for our ink blue aquamarine, this piece is nice and big, but it's thin, as you can see. So I couldn't cut this with one piece unless I cut something really thin. And I just don't want to do that with such a beautiful color. So what I'm going to do is cut it in half with my trim saw, and that'll give me two stones with the right thickness where I could cut pretty much anything that I want. And I think I'll try for a pair of Portuguese cut and see how big I can cut them with cutting this in half. Here's a design by the late Jeff Graham that he called Simple Portuguese. Simple because he designed it for smaller stones, and he removed one row or tier of facets, which you don't really need for smaller stones. I did tweak Jeff's design just a bit using GemCut Studio software, and I slightly improved performance by using the GCS feature of being able to adjust a design based on a different refractive index, in this case for aquamarine. There are still 145 facets to cut and polish, so it's not really simple, as that's a lot of facets. You won't find a lot of smaller, and I mean probably in the range of 5mm to 7mm as small. I don't see a lot of stones this size cut into the Portuguese design simply because it's a lot of work for a small stone, or in this case, two small stones. But that color, wow. I don't have any problem putting in the extra work for a unique Portuguese cut in an ink blue aquamarine, which you will have a very hard time finding in any jewelry store anywhere else. They're just that rare. I did make a video a while back where I show you how to go back in time in the internet to Jeff's old website and download the 24 or so of Jeff's designs that he put into the public domain for all cutters, including this Portuguese design. And if you do visit Jeff's old website, I would recommend that you also take a moment and look through all of the articles that Jeff wrote on gem cutting. Jeff was a prolific writer, and there's some excellent articles there on gem cutting. Finished polishing the pavilion of our aquamarine, so now I'll transfer the stone and cut the upper half. So I'm pre-forming the pavilion, the bottom half of our second aquamarine from the two pieces we cut out of the piece of rough. So this one's going to be larger, but there is an inclusion right there that I want to take care of. And this will form a cullet here, a center point, But I don't have to bring the pavilion down to do that. I've only cut the first 2 rows. There's 2 more rows or tiers to cut, but I don't want to cut them with this rough, I think I'm using a 340 grit topper. I'll use a finer lap to get those in, and when I do cut those other 2 rows, that'll make the center point. So I don't need to bring the pavilion down, although looking at that you would think I do, but I don't. I do need to bring the sides in a little bit and make it just a little bit smaller, because this part here is not big enough to make the upper half of the stone the crown, so I do need to make it a little bit smaller, but it's pretty big right now, so making it a little bit smaller will also take care of this inclusion. And other than that, I don't mind an inclusion with this particular stone because it's such a good color. It's such a dark blue that an inclusion is nothing to worry about. But if I can get rid of that one, that's kind of a big inclusion, and it's kind of got some earth color, dirt color in it, so that inclusion I would get rid of. I don't know if this is an inclusion here. It looks like it is, but I wouldn't worry about that one. So let me continue to preform our aquamarine. I've got the first row polished with cerium oxide in the creamway lap. That's the first tier down here. I haven't got the upper tiers or the girdle yet polished. So the laps I used were the 340 topper, then the 600 grit another topper, then I used my 12M, which is about a 1500 grit lap. Then I used 8000 grit diamond on a zinc lap to pre-polish, and then the cerium oxide on the creamway. So I'll continue polishing the pavilion of our aquamarine. I finished polishing the bottom half or pavilion of our larger aquamarine, so now I will transfer it, and so we can cut the upper half of the stone. Okay, I finished polishing the upper half of our smaller aquamarine with cerium oxide, and so now I'll cut the table and polish the table, and then this stone will be finished. And the table polished right up with cerium oxide in my creamway lap. In fact, for the table I started with the my 12M, my about a 1500 grit sintered lap from Ukraine, and then I went to 8000 grit diamond on a zinc lap, and then polish, and like I said, it polished right up. So now I'll soak it in the acetone, and we'll be able to take a look at it, weigh it, measure it, and send it off to BOPIE. Okay, I've polished up the upper half of our larger aquamarine, so now I'll set up my machine to cut and polish the table, and then we'll be able to weigh and measure and take a look at our aquamarine. I finished polishing our second aquamarine, our larger one, so now I'll soak it in the acetone to remove the adhesive, and then I'll be able to weigh it, measure it, take a look at both of them, and send them off to BOPIE. In this video, I cut a larger flat piece of beautifully colored ink blue aquamarine in half so that I had the thickness to cut 2 round gemstones out of this awesome material. And this piece was the worst of the lot that I'd purchased because it was flat. I can't wait to cut some of my other few pieces of this ink blue aquamarine in the near future. That color is incredible for aquamarine. The Portuguese cut is not difficult, and I believe any cutter could cut a Portuguese design. It just takes a while longer because of all the facets you need to cut and polish. But I like this design much better than a standard round brilliant. Please let me know in the comments what you think of this ink blue aquamarine and the Portuguese design. And as always, happy fasting, everyone.